Hello and welcome to a blowout edition of Weekly MTG. We have so many Dominaria Remastered previews today. We're going to try to fit them all in an hour, but we have a lot to talk about. Now, the first question that some of you might have is why we're doing Dominaria Remastered previews in essentially a single day. We're going to do a bunch of previews today, and then the full card image gallery will contain the rest of the set tomorrow. So it's kind of a two-day preview season. But the big question is why? So we've heard a lot of feedback lately related to two things. We've actually heard a lot of feedback related to a lot of things, but I'm going to talk about two things today. One is the prevalence of preview season, and the other is releases being on top of one another. So we are making some slight changes to adjust for that, including this quick preview season for DMR and some shifts for Phyrexia, all will be one. So, a few things to keep in mind before I say these two things. Even as we hear feedback, Magic's release schedule is worked on years in advance. So we talk a lot about designing cards years in advance, but when we're designing cards for a set and designing those sets, we often do so with a release date in mind, so we have a work back schedule, that whole deal. So there are only so many knobs we can turn. So 2023 is mostly set, but there are knobs we can turn to address some of this feedback. So let's turn some of those knobs. The first change we made was this preview season. So we have heard quite a bit about preview seasons being always on. Now, it's important to keep in mind that things like first looks, thing we're doing with Phyrexia will be one next week, those are intended to give advance notice to retailers to help them make their purchasing decisions and decide what to stock. So it feels always on, but there is a method to our madness. That said, given that DMR is a reprint set, we're going to try something with this set. As I said, we're doing the preview season really contained. We're blowing it out today. This is probably the fastest, as long as I've been here, the fastest official preview season that we've ever done, so that we can get the information out in the world and people can start making their decisions now. We've been making preview seasons shorter where we can, and this is as absolutely short as we can make this one. We'll see how it goes, but we wanted to try it out, and we figured an all reprint set was a good way to do it. Dominaria Remastered is also pretty awesome. I think you're going to get a feel for that during this show. The second change is that we wanted to give a little bit more breathing room between releases. Dominaria Remastered releases January 13th, and then originally 3 weeks after that was Phyrexia All Will Be One. Now, 2023 releases are pretty locked in. There's only so much we can tweak, but we do have a few knobs we can turn. And so what we're going to do is we're going to push back Phyrexia All Will Be One's release date by a week. So it's now going to release February 10th, and we have some dates we can throw up on the screen. So next week will be the first look at Phyrexia All Will Be One. Again, that's the sort of high-level treatments, some cards, that sort of thing, so that stores know what they're looking at. And then we'll start with Story for Phyrexia All Will Be One on January 12th. And then we'll start previews on January 17th. With the debut, followed by pre-release events kicking off January 3rd, digital release, February 3rd, digital release February 7th, and then the tabletop release, that new date is February 10th. So again, we're pushing it back a little bit to try to give a little bit more room. There wasn't much more we could push it, given how close we are to it, but I think the team here felt that giving a little bit more time was important. And then the launch party events, store championship events, those are actually the same dates as we had before. The launch party event's not. The store championship event, February 25th, is the same days we had before. So that's what we're doing with Phyrexia All Will Be One. We're pushing it back. There's a lot more things we're talking about in that space, but more to come there, I'm sure. But in the meantime, today, we're going to talk Dominaria Remastered. I'm super excited for this set. I am a longtime player and have been playing for 27 of Magic's 30 years, so I was around for a lot of these cards' original printing. So Dominaria Remastered, if you're not familiar, is a set that takes cards printed in Dominaria sets over Magic's history from Alpha all the way up through now. So if a card was in a Dominaria featured set, it is fair game for this. So we're going to see a lot of cool cards today. So let's first of all learn a little bit about what's in the product. So we've got two types of boosters. There are draft boosters, and this set is a blast to draft from the past, as I keep rhyming. And then collector boosters. So in each of those packs, let's talk about what you can get. Put the graphic up on the screen there. So in a draft booster, so I'm going to start at the bottom because the top is where there's a little more explanation. So each draft booster will have one non-foil retro basic land. We're going to see those in a moment. It'll have 9 commons, it'll have 3 uncommons, and then it will have 1 traditional foil. So it will come with a foil in each pack of any rarity or a retro common or uncommon. And then the rare slot will be a rare or mythic in either regular, retro frame, or the borderless treatment. Now the thing with those 2 slots up top is that you will get a retro frame card in every pack. So if you get a retro rare, then you'll get a traditional foil of any rarity in that foil slot. If you do not get a retro rare, then you will get a foil, retro, common, or uncommon. All right, then the collector boosters. A lot going on here. So we've got the foil, retro, or borderless rare mythic. Of note, there are only 2 special treatments in Dominaria Remastered. There are the retro frame and the borderless frame. So we are going to see examples of both of those throughout this, of course. Then 1 borderless rare or mythic, 1 retro frame rare or mythic, 1 foil, retro, or borderless common or uncommon, 2 retro or borderless common or uncommons, 1 foil rare or mythic, 2 foil uncommons, 5 foil commons, 1 foil retro basic land, and then 1 foil token, which is double-sided. So let's get into card previews. That's enough information. So as I mentioned that you will be getting these retro frame basic lands, so we took some of the best art throughout Magic's history from basic lands, put them in the retro frame, and the results are pretty fantastic. So let's take a look at these basic lands. We've got the John Avon Plains and the Eric Peterson, I believe that's the Mirage Plains. Next up, we've got, of course, the Alpha Island from Mark Poole. Got Richard Wright's work on the right for islands. Next up, Swamp from Titus Lunter and Romus. And then Mountains. That John Avon Mountain from Mirage is one of my favorites. Personal favorite there. We've got the Rob Alexander Mountain on the left. Next up, and the Forests, another John Avon piece there. Yes, a lot of these are John Avon pieces. Not a coincidence. And then Anthony S. Waters Forest on the right there. So every pack will come with one of these retro frame lands. But I want to talk about some mythics. I want to talk about some cool rares. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show off a couple mythic rares. Just a little taste. And then we're going to go through the draft archetypes. We're going to talk about all 10 draft archetypes, and we're going to show off a bunch of cards, including rares and commons and uncommons from each of the draft archetypes. And then we'll finish things off with just a long list of mythics. We've also have some like cool rares in there and some nostalgia plays, but that's kind of the order of operations here. If you're here for previews, we will have plenty of them. Okay, let's start with one I already saw chat asking for. Sylvan Library is coming back. So there you have it in the main, the retro frame, and the borderless version on the right with art by Mark Poole. So Sylvan Library will be in this set as a mythic rare. And Sylvan Libraries had a couple reprintings before, but one of the cool things about Dominaria Remastered is that it does take some cards that have never been reprinted before. So we saw that when we revealed the set with something like Arborea. I think this next one is going to be a favorite reprint as well, because we have Test of Endurance getting its first reprint. So it comes with new art from Denman Rook. And it comes in the regular, the retro, and then Carl Critchlow did a borderless version of Test of Endurance. We're going to have more of those first-time reprints coming up. But we also have some cycles to talk through. So before we talk through what the draft archetypes are, it's important to know what mana fixing you have. So let's talk about the lands in this set. So the enemy check lands are returning. These were printed in Dominaria. Not originally, but they were printed there. So we've got we've got all 5 versions here. The bit I'm excited about is these are coming in the retro frame as well. Clifftop Retreat, Hinterland Harbor, Isolated Chapel, Sulphur Falls, and Woodland Cemetery. I am eyeing that Sulphur Falls right there. All right, then a set of lands that has not been reprinted in a long time. So these are the original Tri-lands, the Layers. So these were reprinted way back when in Invasion Block, and you have to bounce a non-layer land you control with your owner's hand, and then you get 3 colors of mana. It doesn't come into play tapped, which is a little different. It does bounce some lands, so there's some synergies there. These will definitely be your mana fixing for the draft format. Now, the draft format is not a tri-color draft format, but we have not printed these in a very long time. And so, good to see those come back. All right, let's go through some draft archetypes. First up, we're going to look at black-green mid-range. So we've got Chainer's Edict, Oversold Cemeteries making its way back with some new art, Urborg Uprising, Deadwood Treefolk, Penumbra Bobcat, and one-time powerhouse Spiritmonger as an uncommon, I'll note. This draft archetype is all about getting value out of each and every card, doubling up on things. Now, some of these have some special treatments as well. So let's start with Chainer's Edict. We're going to go left to right on here. Chainer's Edict gets all 3 treatments. We get the retro frame in the middle. You see the little flashback gravestone symbol in the upper left for Chainer's Edict, and then the extended art on the borderless treatment on the far right. Next up, not backwards. Oversold Cemetery. This is a favorite of mine as well. Just tons of value. Getting creatures back from the graveyard every turn. This should be in a lot more Commander decks, and I think it will be after this printing. So we get a retro frame with the art by Gerald Threat, and then Drew Tucker did a version on the right for the extended or borderless treatment. Next up, a little Deadwood Treefolk as a treat with that retro frame. Just all kinds of value there. And then Spiritmonger. Couldn't miss the opportunity to do Spiritmonger in that retro frame. Again, downshifted to an uncommon from its original printing where it was a rare. Yeah, that card back in the day was the card. In fact, the archetype The Rock, the black-green, gets its, well, not from Spiritmonger. It was a different card, but Spiritmonger is sort of the spiritual father of the black-green rock archetype. All right, next archetype is black-red zombies and goblins, tied together by that uncommon on the far right there, Drow News Crusade, which says all goblins are black and are zombies in addition to their other creature types. A lot of hits here from the past. Undead Gladiator, cycles, and you can discard a card to return it to your hand. You've got Dedapult, which lets you sacrifice zombies. You've got Gempalm Incinerator, Mogg War Marshal, Pashalik Mons from the more recent era. And then we've got treatments for some of these. So this archetype's all about sacrificing goblins and zombies and getting value out of your graveyard. That oversold cemetery would fit nicely here as well. Undead Gladiator, again, gets the gravestone in the upper left-hand corner. And then Gem Palm Incinerator. Got some new art by Andrew Marr, but also gets the retro frame treatment so that your goblins can stay pretty retro frame. Mog War Marshal, a favorite for just getting goblins out there. And then Pashalik Mon, so relatively new addition to the Goblin arsenal, gets a retro frame reprint there. All right, next up, Drownews Crusade gets the retro treatment as well, which if it's going to be the glue that ties the archetype together, you might as well get the retro frame treatment. All right, next. The archetype I will surely draft way too much of, Green-Blue Ramp. When I originally looked at the list, Avenomancer was a highlight for me. I started back then, and I thought that card was amazing. And it's fine. It's a good limited card. I did not realize how steep the cost of returning 3 basic lands was, but if you're in a ramp deck that can cast things like Nature's Lore to get out additional lands, Avenomancer can turn a lot of things into sheep. All right, now, a number of these, people are already gushing over Wild Growth. We've got some variations on that. Let's look at the alternate versions of this. So Stroke of Genius, originally a infinite mana kill condition in Academy decks way back when. Target player draws X cards, true classic, and we get some new art from Ravina Kai, and the retro frame there gives it that nice little touch. You can feel like you're Stroke of Geniusing your opponent for $1 billion. Nature's Lore gets a regular and retro frame treatment. And then Wild Growth is going to get both the new frame and the retro frame. And yes, it will come in foil, everyone. Black Border Foil Wild Growth. That is a thing that is happening here. And then Green-White Threshold. So this one's pretty straightforward. Get 7 cards in your graveyard and turn on all your Threshold cards. So Werebear is a classic with the classic flavor text. He exercises his right to bear arms in there. You've got Seaton's Desire. Crop rotation is included because sacrificing a land puts 2 cards in your graveyard for Threshold. And that'll increase your cards like Mystic Zealot and Nomad Decoy, and that Divine Sacrament on the left, which of this sextuplet is the only one that gets a special treatment. So let's take a look at that. There's the retro frame for Divine Sacrament. White creatures get +2/+2 when you have Threshold. Next up, Red-Green Cycling. So some of my favorite art is on one of the alternates in this, but real quick. So this archetype is all about cycling for effect. You have, of course, Lightning Rift there, second from the left, which is one of the original cycling payoffs. Incredible in draft. Grim Lavamancer's on here because when you're cycling a bunch of cards into your graveyard, Grim Lavamancer can then turn them into more damage to the face. Slice and Dice and Spark Spray are cycling classics. Slice and Dice is, of course, a sweeper. That can also be a little mini sweeper when you cycle it. And then Break Asunder is a very flexible card that won't always have targets, and so you can always just cycle it away. And now that Grim Lavamancer has a special treatment, so let's look at that too, actually. The borderless version on the right might be my favorite borderless version in this set. I'm not even a huge red player or Grim Lavamancer fan, but that art by Paulo Parente is absolutely gorgeous. There is oddly enough, another red card, which I think the art competes with certainly, but I'm a big fan of this Grim Lavamancer. Next up, Red-White auras. That is an Enlightened Tutor there on the left. So this archetype is all about stacking auras up on creatures and getting good things to come out of it. So Auramancer can of course return enchantments from your graveyard to your hand, including auras that die in creatures. Mesa Enchantress gives you a draw engine. And Undying Rage is an enchantment that can keep coming back, while Tiana can do that with many of your enchantments. Thran Golem, of course, gets bigger when you enchant it. Let's look at the versions of the Enlightened Tutor, because this one has some Richard Kane Ferguson art on that borderless version on the right. Yeah, Enlightened Tutor, we get the retro frame with the new art by Howard Lyon. And then, yeah, Richard Kane Ferguson stepping into that Enlightened Tutor era. That is a little teaser for later. That is not the last tutor with Richard Kane Ferguson art in this set. All right, let's see what comes next. So the Thran Golem, it's a nice little touch in this archetype, so it gets a retro frame treatment as well. All right, next up, Tiana, Ship's Caretaker. So this is one of the legends from Dominaria, and it gets a retro frame treatment here. Solid commander, solid addition to that archetype. The archetype I will certainly be drafting way too much of. Blue-black control, so you see a lot going on here. So Arcanus the Omnipotent is a draft all-star. Circular Logic lets you build up your graveyard, counter a bunch of stuff. And then Icarslick, Recoil, Faceless Butcher, all great removal spells. And of course, Confiscate is just about the best thing you can do with 6 mana in draft. So let's take a look at the versions of Arcanus. And then we get some retro versions of Recoil. And that's it. Okay. Next up is Blue-Red Storm. There's some hits in this one that people have been looking for. Yes, that's High Tide. Yes, that's Mystical Tutor. We have fancy treatments of several of these. So Blue-Red Storm archetype is all about casting a bunch of spells and building up to an Empty the Warrens that puts enough goblins on the board to kill your opponent, a Grape Shot to clear things out maybe, or kill them if your draft is going that well. And Storm Entity can also build up to that. So High Tide is a pretty sweet card to try to draft around. There is definitely a ton of support for this archetype in here. Blue-Red Storm is a cube favorite, and it's going to be pretty sweet to try to pull this off in Dominaria Remastered draft. But it is the blue-red archetype is Blue-Red Storm. So let's look at some of the variants of these. First up, we have Empty the Warrens. So we get that retro frame treatment for Empty the Warrens for you vintage players. Next up, yep, there's more Richard Kane Ferguson art on a tutor. So Mystical Tutor gets the retro frame and that borderless treatment with Mystical Tutor. And then High Tide. Get your fancy versions of High Tide. Retro frame with the new art from Mark Simonetti, as well as the Jeff Miracola borderless version. And then Frantic Search also gets the retro frame treatment. All right, next up is an archetype we're calling White-Black Life Payment. This combines effects that gain life with cards that do fantastic things for costing you life. So you see a number of ways to gain life there. Congregate, Keldrin Gargoyle, Spirit Link, Gerard's Verdict, and then cards like Chainer, Dementia Master, and Flesh Reaver give you something to do with all of that life. If you've never put a Spirit Link on a Flesh Reaver, you just have not experienced this kind of beautiful, beautiful magic. Spirit Link's a fun one. Spirit Link, Keldrin Gargoyle, because they don't explicitly grant lifelink. It stacks with lifelink, for one thing. It stacks with each other, so a Spirit Link on a Keldrin Gargoyle will gain you 6 life when it deals damage. Spirit Link also works with things like Flesh Reaver that damage you. So if you put a Spirit Link on a Flesh Reaver and you deal 4 damage, and you deal 4 damage to yourself, you actually end up netting 4 life instead of losing 4 life, which is pretty cool. And then Gerard's Verdict is a staple, certainly, of efficient decks looking to gain a little life. And we've got some treatments for some of these. So Spirit Link, of course, had to get that retro frame treatment with the Kev Walker art. Next up, Chainer Dementia Master. So the Mark Zug art classic gets the retro frame, and then Kev Walker. You see this a lot on Legends in this set, is we kind of get these zoom in action poses. We're going to see more of these later on, but that's a really cool version of Chainer Dementia Master from Kev Walker on the right. Yeah, really powerful. I play that card a lot in Commander. All right, next up, Gerard's Verdict. So retro frame treatment right there. All right, next up is a personal favorite archetype of mine, Blue-White Blink. Before you ask, there is no Muldrifter in this set because Muldrifter is not from Dominaria. So instead, we have things like Momentary Blink, White Mane Lion, Denizen of the Deep, Floodgate. And if you've never blinked a Floodgate, you have not lived. Manowar and Sawtooth Loon, who is kind of like a Muldrifter because it draws 2 cards. Now, there's a number of treatments for the Blue-White Blink archetype, which again, I will be drafting way too much of. Momentary Blink, it's its retro frame version there. And then White Mane Lion. Next up, special versions of Denizen of the Deep. This one makes me chuckle a little bit. This definitely feels old school. It's got that old Anson Maddox art, and then Mark Tadine takes over the borderless version, which is amazing. Pick one up for your Serpent's Commander deck. And then Sawtooth Loon, the kind of sort of a Muldrifter, not really, gets a retro frame treatment, but does a lot of cool things in the Blink archetype. It's got that gating in the art from back in the day. All right, next up, we have other previews. So we've shown off a couple mythics. We've shown off some rares as part of the archetypes, but I want to show off a couple exciting rares and maybe an uncommon or two. And then, of course, it wouldn't be a Dominaria Remastered set without some of the OGs. So let's kick things off with this section with Entomb, a rare that lets you search your library for a card, put that card in the graveyard, and shuffle. Seems like a waste, right? Like, why would you want to put a card in your graveyard? That doesn't make any sense. Ron Spencer picks up the extended art version of Entomb all the way on the right. Incredible art there. I also like the flavor text on the extended version. Oh, don't worry about that one. I'm saving him for later from Liliana. Again, that is a rare Entomb there. Next up, a rare Overmaster. When blue mages have got you down, the next instant or sorcery spell you cast this turn can be countered. Draw a card. Certainly worth including in some commander decks. Gets that retro frame treatment on the right. Next up is one I'm personally very excited for. I know you are too, Ben Wheeler. This is a staple in Canadian Highlander. It's also really good in Commander. Savine's Reclamation gets its retro frame treatment with the gravestone in the upper left. That just makes me feel retro feelings. So returns permanent with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If this spell was cast from your graveyard, you get to copy it and do it again. Really powerful rare there. First reprinting for Savine's Reclamation, I believe, and it gets the retro frame treatment. Next up, this is just an uncommon, but I love Fire and Ice. It's been reprinted a bunch, but certainly a welcome addition to any draft format. This can go in a bunch of different archetypes. Just a really cool card. I love Fire and Ice, and so I put it here because, you know what, it's a cool card. And then next in this section, before we get to some of the OGs, Exploration is coming back as a rare with new art from Lindsay Look. Lets you play an additional land on each of your turns. Exploration is a very, very powerful card in older formats, in Commander, in anywhere you can play it, basically. and it gets that retro frame treatment on the right. Love exploration. This goes in basically every one of my green commander decks. And you know what? One of my Canadian Highlander decks too, because it's just that good. All right, so next, before we get to all the mythics, we're going to get to a bunch of mythics in a sec. Dominaria Remastered really is a celebration of 30 years of Dominaria, and as such, we had to, of course, revisit the classics. So there are a ton of cards from Magic's earliest days in this set, but I wanted to highlight a few from Magic's very, very first days. So, of course, we could not have a Dominaria set without Giant Spider, the GOAT, one of the most reprinted cards of all time. I think at one time it had the record for being printed in the most consecutive core sets, if I'm remembering correctly. Has to be here. It's a common. Next up, we have Ornithopter. Gets that retro frame treatment as well. And then a personal favorite of mine, Royal Assassin, scourge of limited formats everywhere. Also, if you started playing back then, you knew and feared the power of Royal Assassin. Yes, Icy Manipulator is in this set. Yes, you will be able to tap something down with Icy Manipulator and then kill it with Royal Assassin in Dominaria Remastered Limited, which is all I want in the entire world, basically. All right. Next up, a card that's been, it's been outmoded a little bit, but it holds a place near and dear to our heart, which is Savannah Lions. Savannah Lions was the original, most efficient creature ever. We've gotten some 2-1s for 1 that have abilities now, and so the cat's a bit of a nostalgia play. It's a common, but we really could not leave it out. Speaking of cards we couldn't leave out, Shivan Dragon gets some updated art. So Donato did the Shivan Dragon that has been the most reprinted art. And then prior to that, of course, was the classic Melissa Benson art. Donato takes another swing at it here and knocks it out of the park again. So the classic Shivan Dragon in the main and retro frame. We couldn't leave Shivan Dragon out of this set. Okay. It's quite a bit of nostalgia there. We're going to keep going with some nostalgia, but we're going to do it with the Mythics. So the way this is going to work, I'm going to show, I believe this is all the rest of the Mythics. And then the rest of today, you can follow Wizards' social media platforms, and we will have additional previews. And then tomorrow is the full card image gallery. But yeah, we got some saucy stuff coming up here. Let's kick things off. I said there'd be more tutors with Richard Kane Ferguson art. I wasn't just talking about Mystical Tutor. Let's take a look at Vampiric Tutor. Now, of course, it's got that Raymond Swanlin art on the left, but Richard Kane Ferguson again stepped in to do another tutor. We've got the retro frame in the middle, and then the borderless version on the right. Again, Richard Kane Ferguson stepping back in with his distinctive style. Love Richard Kane Ferguson. All right, next up is another classic that gets some new art on the extended version. We've got Gauntlet of Power. Gauntlet of Power, especially powerful in single color decks where it can double your mana, make your creatures of the chosen color bigger. The extended version on the right there is art by Ron Spears, but it gets the color into it. It could be red, it could be green, it could be blue, it could be anything. Yep, updated art there with extended for Gauntlet of Power, and if you're old school like me, that retro frame in the middle is going to make a lot of people happy. All right, next up, a card. So again, this is what I love about this set, is cards that have not gotten reprintings before. So Hunting Grounds, or that Threshold archetype. As long as there are 7 or more cards, if you're not familiar with this, as long as there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, Hunting Grounds has whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may put a creature card from your hand into the battlefield. Just put it in. Just do it. So we get the retro frame there in the middle with the art by Eli Minaya. And then Darren Bader did the extended art version on the right. Yeah, people asking, what is this card? That's because it has not been reprinted in a very, very long time. Super powerful card. Glad to see it back. Someone who might enter the hunting grounds. You like that transition there? Not really, it was kind of lame. Kamal, Fist of Krosa, a classic here. Super powerful, has an overrun on a stick, can turn your lands into creatures. Kamal is one of the stalwarts of the Dominaria storyline starting in the Odyssey era. So glad to see Kamal back. Next up is a card that has not been reprinted in a very long time and was only printed in a few starter focus sets, which is Last Chance. So this is another in the take an extra turn, lose at the end of that turn cycle. So we get new art from Joshua Raphael. And it is, I'm giggling because of the flavor text. I only had time to read half the spell, but I'm pretty sure this will work. And then I love the art from Darren Bader on the right, which is the broken sword soldier facing off against the dragon in that extended art. All right, next up, also I keep saying this, but this is some amazing art. So this is new art from Ryan Pancoast, and on the right there, Jeff Miracola for Legacy Weapon. For those who are not familiar with the Legacy Weapon story, this is the pivotal moment for the Legacy Weapon, where, spoiler alert, the Legacy Weapon comes together to actually defeat Urz, or sorry, not defeat her. I mean, Urz was killed too, but defeat Yawgmoth above the skies of Dominaria. So you get that story packed into it real tightly. What I love about this is we see Yawgmoth here being, for lack of a better term, fired at by the Legacy Weapon. And then on the right, you can see Yawgmoth in the back getting his comeuppance as well. Next up, one of the more recent entrants from the Mythic sheet, Lyra Dawnbringer. We were talking about this set, this card before the set, and that Donato art on the right is really going to pop in foil with the stained glass. So will the Chris Ron art as well, but Donato put some more stained glass in the background to really hit that home. It's got the retro frame, which Lyra has not received, and then the extended on the back. All right, next up is No Mercy, a classic from back in the day. Whenever a creature deals damage to you, destroy it. That gets the retro frame treatment. And then Ron Spencer created the art, the new art. The original art on the left is from No Mercy's original printing, and then No Mercy on the right is Ron Spencer doing the borderless version. No Mercy, yeah. Fantastic card, needed a reprint. Welcome back, No Mercy. A fun one up next, Nut Collector. Nut Collector, yeah, 6 mana, human druid. You get to make a squirrel. So this goes into the Threshold archetype. If you have Threshold, all your squirrels get +2/+2. The art on that Adam Rex version on the right, also fantastic. The Jesper Icing art is also fantastic. Everything about this card is just a delight for you squirrel fans out there, or your Threshold fans. Doesn't have to be squirrels. Come enjoy a little nut collecting. But also, if you happen to open this, I would definitely recommend going into the Threshold archetype. Yeah, really fun card. All right, next up, maybe some of my favorite art in the set. World Gorger Dragon. World Gorger Dragon has been a combo staple for as long as Anime Dead and World Gorger Dragon have been around together. You get that retro frame in the middle, but that RK Post art of the dragon wrapped around the entire Dominarian globe is just so fantastic. Extended art version. Really incredible work by RK Post there. All right, next up, another classic, Sarah Avatar. So Sarah Avatar, Has not been reprinted in a bit, I believe. Power and toughness, each equal to your life total, and when it's put in your graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into its owner's library. Gets the retro frame version there. All right, we have a couple of heavy hitters coming up next. And this is some of that legendary art I was talking about. So let's take a look at Urza, Lord High Artificer. Now this is actually Urza's second retro frame printing there in the middle. But Greg Staples also reimagines the art for that borderless version on the right. An action close-up shot of Urza doing his thing with Thopters in the background. Urza, Lord High Artificer, yeah, another fantastic reprint. Yeah, and I'm really excited for that extended version on the right. Next up, can't have Urza if you don't have Yawgmoth. So we're also bringing back Yawgmoth, Thran Physician. So we get the retro frame in the middle. Again, Yawgmoth has received a retro frame printing, but we get that sort of close-up action, really creepy Greg Staples art on the right with the extended art. Borderless. I keep saying extended. It is borderless. Thank you, producer Sean. Yeah, Yawgmoth, Thran Physician coming back. Yes, Urza and Yawgmoth did get old border versions in a previous set, but they're proving pretty popular, so we brought them back and also gave them that borderless version as well. All right, one more Mythic. I saved it for last because it has a token with it. And there are tokens in this set. We're not showing them off here. Those will be available tomorrow on dailymtg.com. But personal favorite of mine has a token, Dark Depths. The retro frame in the middle there. And then also the really, there's just something spooky about that Dark Depths art from Rob Alexander on the right, where most of it is just empty space. I'm terrified of the ocean, so that absolutely just horrifies me. And of course, when you summon Merit Lage, you get the token. And yes, this token will come in foil. All right, that covers all of the cards that I have to share with you. Now, of course, our various social media outlets will be sharing more today, and then the full card image gallery will be going up tomorrow on dailymtg.com. There's still a lot of the set left to go. I showed off, 6 exemplars for each of the draft archetypes. We showed off some lands. We showed off all the mythics. We only showed off some of the rares. There's still a good chunk of rares left to go, and those are going to be shown off between today and tomorrow. So we do have a little bit of time for questions here. So first, when does this release? This releases on January 13th. So January 13th is the release date for Dominaria Remastered. Please make an old border Delver of Secrets happen. I'll see what I can do. Will there be any downshifts for Pauper? We did ask the team about that. They said there wasn't particularly much. Obviously, there are some Pauper cards in this set, but they did not flag anything amazing that I can recall. All right. Do we get Thalids in this set? Maybe. Let's see. All right. No Planeswalkers in this set. Not unless you count Urza. Not unless you count Urza. Any info on the Explorer Anthology previews? I do not off the top of my head. I believe the last of them are getting previewed today. This set is not coming to Arena. So Dominaria Remastered not coming to Arena. This set, again, I also saw the question, this set does not change legality. It's not modern legal. This is a pure reprint set, celebrating a lot of nostalgia. So it doesn't change legality on any of these cards. No Hero of Dominaria, correct. Can retro frame foils appear in draft boosters? Yes. Can we put the draft boosters slide back up? So there are two possible slots for retro. So the rare slot can have a non-foil retro rare or mythic in it. The foil slot, if it has a retro card in it, is going to be a common or an uncommon. So there will not be rare or mythic foil retro cards in the draft booster. Those will be found in the collector boosters. But you can get the non-foil retro rares and mythics in draft boosters. Let's see. What is the price of a pack? We do not talk about we do not set the price. There is no MSRP. We have not done MSRP for years and years and years. We need a retro Isochron Scepter, please. Noted. No Onslaught fetches. Correct. There are no Onslaught fetches in this. So is there a mythic in every pack? No, there is a rare or mythic in every pack. Yeah, we're not bringing back MSRP. That is not a thing we're doing to be sneaky. MSRP is not applicable and not even legal in a lot of the world. So having something that was North America only, it didn't make any sense. Is the print run similar to TSR? We don't talk explicitly about print run, but my understanding is it's bigger than TSR. But how much, I can't say. Is there a retro frame grape shot? If it wasn't on here, I believe the answer is no. Let's see. What is in the collector boosters? We can put the collector booster slide back up to answer that one. The person asking about Ancient Tomb, no. No Ancient Tomb in the set. Okay, collector booster. One foil, retro, or borderless, rare, or mythic. I always call that the fancy slot. We are going to open these on WeeklyMTG in the beginning of January before the set releases. One borderless, rare, or mythic. One retro frame, rare, or mythic. It's worth noting that not all rares and mythics come in retro or borderless, so those are going to be subsets. You saw some of that today. Obviously, you saw what all of the mythics were. So you'll see that there. And then you get the foil, retro, or borderless common or uncommon, two retro or borderless commons and uncommons, one foil rare, two foil uncommons, five foil commons, one foil retro basic land, one foil token that is double-sided. To clarify, you can only get one foil retro or one foil borderless rare or mythic in a collector booster. You can't get more than one in a single pack. So each of these lines here is a different slot. Each slot will contain what is listed in that, or what the options are in that line. Let's see. How will it release on Magic the Gathering Online? You will have to ask that team. Let's see. How am I doing? Great. Is there a bundle package for this, or just the draft box and the collector box? Just the draft box and collector box. What is the next planned set with the retro frame cards? We haven't announced any other cards, any sets like that. Let's see. Yes, so someone asking, did you not show Force of Will and Time Stretch with the other mythics because they were previously revealed? Yes. For those who, we maybe should have, but we did not put, so Force of Will is in this set, Time Stretch is in this set, Birds of Paradise, Arborea, we showed all of those off previously when we announced the set earlier. When will the tokens be posted on the mothership? I believe tomorrow. Why are only certain cards in the retro frame and not all of them? Because if you do too many in the retro frame, it kind of dilutes the pool. We wanted to make sure that the retro frame was meaningful and nostalgic. Yeah, please keep doing the retro frames. I'm a huge fan of the retro frames. Before I even knew that we were doing that, I created a white blue commander deck with all retro frames in it, and well, actually, it was just the older border, and I've gotten to upgrade it with retro frames. Can you get rare mythic retro foils in the draft booster? No, those are only in the collector booster. Let's see, fully previewed by tomorrow. Yes, the whole set will be fully previewed by tomorrow. What do I have to do to get white borders to come back next? I don't know, man. That sounds more like a secret layer. Let's see. Any dwarves? Maybe. Can't remember off the top of my head, but dwarves have been around for a while, so it's possible. Let's see. No slivers in the set. I honestly don't. It's not a theme. So the set doesn't have any sort of like 5-color archetypes. So I believe there aren't slivers in the set, but don't quote me on that. Let's see. To confirm, no etched foils. Confirm. No etched foils, traditional foils only. Am I enjoying the new time on WeeklyMTG? I am. It's a nice change of pace. I think it works. Where will the full card list be available tomorrow? On dailymtg.com. Will this set include a box topper? No, but there is a play promo. So if you show up on release weekend, there is a retro frame counterspell with the Mark Tadine art, which is another card we've already shown off. That will be the promo there. Is this set standard legal? It is not. These are all reprints, and so they will be not changing legality anywhere. Have we seen all of the borderless cards? I do not believe so. When do Phyrexia All Will Be One previews start again? Can you put the calendar back up? Yeah, we can definitely put that back up. So next week here on WeeklyMTG at 10 a.m. Pacific time, we're going to do the first look. And again, we are going to show off quite a bit. Mike Turian's going to join us, and we're going to talk about Phyrexia All Will Be One. We're going to show off a bunch of art. We're going to talk about the various different treatments, how it fits into the larger story and all of that. We're going to do that next week. And again, we're doing it for all the people, but we do those first looks so that retailers and distributors know what they're doing when they need to order. And then we're going to, on January 12th, kick off Building Worlds and the first story. So that's when you're going to start getting the story and the lore behind Phyrexia All Will Be One. January 17th is when we'll kick off previews with the debut. Pre-release events start February 3rd, so that was the original release date. We have now moved it up so that the tabletop release date is February 10th and the digital release is February 7th. Those launch party events will happen February 10th through 12th, and then the Store Championship events are unchanged. Let's see. Have we seen all of the Mythic Rares in this set? Yes. Between this show and the Mythic Rares we already showed off, which include Force of Will and Time Stretch, we have shown off all of the Mythics at this point. There are still a ton of Rares to be revealed, though. How likely are you to return to Olgrothra? Maybe show Homeland some love? You know, I'd love that. Who knows? One day. Is there a Hymn to Turok reprint? I don't believe so. I don't have total encyclopedic knowledge of this set, but I feel like that one would have stood out to me. Any Nantuko? Maybe. Maybe. When will we see the first preview of Lord of the Rings card? Not for a bit. Not for a bit. Are preview seasons going to be faster like this now? Maybe. So we got to see how this one goes, how people react to it. This one has the bonus of being an all reprint set. The challenge with non-reprint sets, with new mechanics, things like that, we need to be able to talk about mechanics and explain them, let people ask questions, kind of ruminate on it. It also depends on what's happening at the time. Sets like Phyrexia All Will Be One will continue to be longer-ish preview cycles. When I say longer, I mean like a week and a half, which is still shorter than we used to do. So we'll see. Part of Magic and Wizards of the Coast's whole philosophy is experimenting and trying new things and iterating on it and doing it better next time. So we'll see how this Dominaria Remastered preview 2 days go. And we'll go from there. We know people are ingesting a lot of previews these days, and the first look has made it feel like preview season is always on, even if those are for sets that are a little ways off. And so we're trying this to try to limit some of that feeling. Because originally Dominaria Remastered was going to be 4 days worth of previews, a Tuesday kicking off on this show and then ending on Friday. And we thought we'd try this and see how it goes. So we're interested in your feedback. We'd love to hear if people like this sort of a preview season for an all reprint set, for other sets going forward. And I say season, it's like a day and a half. So we'll see. Let's see. Will any cards hit Mitgo? I am unclear on that. Any plans for the allied check lands in the retro frames? Nothing to announce right now. Let's see. What else do we have here? We only have about 5 minutes left. If you have any other questions, I will. So I'll quickly say we've got 2 shows left in the year. That second show is somewhat news to producer Sean, though we've talked about it. Next week's show is going to be Phyrexia All Will Be One. First look, again, it's mostly aimed at letting retailers, distributors know more about the set that they're ordering, because their order window is earlier than customers. But you know what? Why not let everybody in and take a look at what we've got coming? So that is next week's show. Mike Turian will join us. He was the product architect on that set. He knows all about it. And then the week after that, we're just going to have some fun and hang out on the 20th. Show off some of my favorite things, talk about Magic, hang out, that sort of deal. Pretty easy. And then we will be back after the new year to ring in with Dominaria Remastered. Let's see. I like perpetual spoiler season. It's always fun to have new cards to talk about. And that's part of the balance, is different people like different things, and we're trying to strike a balance so that as many people enjoy Magic as possible. So will you be opening any of these packs to show us? Yes. The show on January 10th will be the Dominaria Remastered booster box, draft boosters and collector booster opening. Let's see if there's anything I can answer before we cut out. We've got about 3 minutes left. All right, I think we're gonna call it there. Pre-release kits for this set, no. Are there any lands left? I don't remember. We hit all the cycles of lands, but something like Dark Depths is a one of, and I don't remember if there are any one ofs in here, which there might be. So I'm not going to say yes or no. Again, I don't have a photographic memory of this entire set, but I don't remember anything. All right, we're going to call it there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I love shows like this where I just get to talk about Magic cards, especially Magic cards that make me feel all the nostalgia feelings during our 30th anniversary. Weekly MTG will be back next week with the first look at Phyrexia All Will Be One, so tune in for that. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week.